Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Michelle Moog-Koussa, Executive Director of the Bob Moog Foundation and the Moxium. Thank you so much for being here with us today as we celebrate the 15th glorious anniversary of the Bob Moog Foundation. We're so glad that you could make it and celebrate with us. We do have a lot to celebrate. Before we begin, just a couple of little housekeeping things. The first is, we will be taking questions at the end of the retrospective. So please feel free to put your questions in the comments, and those questions will be fed to me, and I'll get to all of them that I can after the retrospective is finished. The second thing is that this live stream would not be possible without Molly Comerly, our communications manager, and Eric Flombaum, our project and operation manager, both of whom are helping produce this show. It just so happens that today is Molly's 3rd anniversary of her time at the Bob Moog Foundation. So thank you, Molly. Eric has been with us for 3.5 years, and both of them put in a ton of work in all of our projects. So please give them a little bit of love in the comments while we're all here together. So no retrospective of the Bob Moog Foundation would be complete without talking about the Carrying Bridge. For those of you who don't know, the Carrying Bridge is a website for critically and terminally ill people to keep in touch with people that they love. And my father found out that he had a brain tumor at the end of April in 2005. And after a couple months, we knew that things were not going well. My brother, Matthew, set up a page on the Carrying Bridge for the family to communicate with people out there about how my dad was doing. We really just wanted to keep people updated. What we didn't expect is that in the first 7 weeks that the Carrying Bridge page was there, over 60,000 people logged on to that page. And the day my father died on August 21st, 2005, 20,000 people logged onto that page. More powerful, I think, than even those impressive numbers are the 4,000 testimonials that people left on the Carrying Bridge. And when I say testimonials, I mean people speaking to how Bob Moog had inspired their life, how he had inspired them to become a musician. He had inspired them to become a composer. He had inspired them to become an engineer. How he had given them their creative voice. These testimonials went on, and they really struck my family and me very, very powerfully, because my father really kept his career at arm's length from our family. We knew the basics of what he had done, and we kind of knew that he was famous and he had won some awards. But we didn't really understand the full depth and breadth of who Bob Moog was to the rest of the world. We knew our dad. We didn't really know Bob Moog until the Carrying Bridge. So to all of you who left testimonials on the Carrying Bridge, thank you. Because you introduced us to Bob Moog, and it became obvious to us through those testimonials that this legacy of inspiration was so powerful that it not only deserved to be carried forward, but it really demanded to be carried forward. How often do you get to a chance to carry an inspirational force forward, to do good in the world, to affect people's lives? Not that often. And so we embraced it. For the first year of the existence of what was to become the Bob Moog Foundation, I worked alone in my basement as a volunteer, trying to navigate with my family and my father's colleagues and friends how to really make the most powerful and meaningful impact with his legacy, and to carry it forward as best we could to inspire future generations through science, music, technology, and innovation. After about 1.5 years, I became the executive director. We had very little funding at that time, and so I was charged with raising my own small salary. But we did have a bunch of amazing, dedicated volunteers and donors. Our early donors included recognizable names like Isao Tomita, Ikitaro Kakahashi, who was the president of Roland, and Hans Zimmer. But really, the majority of funding that helped us lift the Bob Moog Foundation off the ground and begin to pursue our projects came from donors like you. Our early goals of the foundation were quite a bit different than what they are now. We aspired to create 3 university scholarships at colleges where my father had either attended or taught, and to create a series of electronic music concerts and competitions that would hopefully ignite the electronic music community. We eventually morphed our thinking about what we wanted to provide and felt that it was important that we really reached as many people as possible with Bob's legacy, kind of hearkening back to the tens of thousands of people all over the world that contacted us through the Caring Bridge. We really wanted to be able to reach people to that extent. So our projects eventually shifted into reaching a broader populations, and that started with inspiring elementary school students through the very foundations of sound and serving a very diverse community. That is when we created Dr. Bob's Sound School, our hallmark educational project. One of the things that we felt so strongly about with Dr. Bob's Sound School is we were really concerned, and we remain deeply concerned, that the United States actually ranks 24th in science achievement. Take that in for a minute. 24th in the world in science achievement, according to the Pew Research Center and other organizations like that. We wanted to create a curriculum that would get kids more engaged in science and to reach kids from all walks of life. Dr. Bob's Sound School is a 10-week experiential science curriculum that teaches second graders about the science of sound through music and technology. And through this, we bring Bob's legacy alive in what we feel is a highly impactful way. While Dr. Bob's Sound School meets state and national standards, it is also multisensory, meaning that with every lesson, every activity, our goal is that children hear, touch, and see sound. And in this way, we're reaching many different kinds of learners and engaging them in sound and science. Dr. Bob's Sound School started in 8 classrooms about 8 years ago and has grown to over 100. We have served over 20,000 little kids in that time. And I have to say, my favorite days of the year in this position, and there are many, because it's a great job, but my favorite days are really the days that I go into the classrooms where they're teaching Dr. Bob's Sound School, and I get to see the kids interacting with our curriculum, understanding it, and I get to see those light bulb moments where they really get how sound is made, how it travels, and how it's heard. It's so incredibly rewarding, and it really helps me appreciate the fact of how much we are achieving the mission that we originally set out to achieve. We've also trained over 250 teachers. This is how our curriculum works. We train the teachers, and the teachers teach the kids. These are second grade teachers, though they're generalists. They have to teach everything. We train them not only in our curriculum, but in the basic physics of sound. And some of them know a little bit, and some of them don't know as much. So I like to say that we are teaching two generations at the same time. In addition to just getting kids connected with the magic of sound, and in the realm of science, we try to get them thinking about becoming a scientist of any kind. And we help them understand that scientists are all different kinds of people. They're not just male, not just female. They're certainly not all white or of any ethnicity. Anyone can become a scientist, and it's something we really try to impress upon them. In addition to engaging them just in thinking about science as a viable career and interest, we have some other ulterior goals. And that is, we are really trying to help kids think more creatively. One of the ways we do that in Dr. Bob's Sound School is we teach them about the scientific method, and we use Bob Moog's schematic notebooks as examples for them. We teach them to write down their ideas, no matter what ideas they are, to test their ideas and write down the results. And if the testing doesn't work, to try again, but to always value the ideas they have and to test them out. We're also trying to engage them in the process of discovery. And through those kind of ulterior motives, we are hoping to inspire the next generation of creative thinkers and innovators. Because as I'm sure we can all recognize, we are going to need more and more of that in our world. In addition to the in-person curriculum that we spent so long developing, and I should mention we had a team of 8 people work on that curriculum over a number of years, and they included science teachers, music teachers, technologists, and creativity experts. In addition to that in-person version, last year, with everything that it brought to us, we created a virtual version of Dr. Bob's Sound School so that teachers could teach in person, virtually, or they could teach Dr. Bob's Sound School in a hybrid environment. We also created an online training for the teachers. And we expanded Dr. Bob's Sound School a little bit by offering 4 videos on our YouTube channel called At Home with Dr. Bob's Sound School, which is kind of an extension. It's not what we do in Dr. Bob's Sound School, but it's the same subject matter in some really fun experiments that children can do at home with their parents. So for parents out there who have young children, please check out our At Home with Dr. Bob's Sound School videos. These are something we hope to do a lot more of in the future. In addition to Dr. Bob's Sound School, one of the things that we've been working on since the very beginning is the preservation of the Bob Moog Foundation archives. When my father passed away, we discovered that he had put his entire archive in a big warehouse out in the country. It's the warehouse that actually used to be Big Briar back in the early 80s and to early 90s. He put everything up on pallets very neatly. I think what he did not anticipate in the about 5 years that they were there is that they would become incredibly moldy, and they would be the subject of interest of mice and snakes, and we found many remnants of both of those animals within the archives. So we worked for over 6 months very closely with a volunteer named Doug Babb to rescue those archives, to clean them, rehouse them, prioritize them, and bring them into climate-controlled storage. Those archives are a huge breadth of material that included photos, schematics, project notes, schematic notebooks, prototypes, all kinds of synthesizers, and a huge series of technology and music magazines. Some of the highlights of the synthesizers that have actually been donated to the Bob Moog Foundation Archive, and I should say the Bob Moog Foundation Archive is a mix of materials, some that were original and many that have been donated to us. And some that have been donated to us include a Sonic 6, actually from someone who used to work at the original Moog Music Factory in Buffalo, a Liberation, which I have here with me, super fun instrument, the second Voyager ever made and the first one ever sold out of 14,000 that were ever sold, was donated to us by our present board president, David Mash. So thank you, David. I know he's out there. And that is now on display at the Moxium. So if you get a chance to come visit, be sure to check that out. Roger Powell, the former keyboardist of Utopia, also donated his custom dual manual controller that Bob made especially for him to us. We have a 1967 modular, as well as the prototype of the Moog drum controller. Our goal with these archives, of course, is to protect, preserve, and share them, to share them with other museums, to share them with researchers, and of course, to share them with the public. The bigger this collection gets, the better we can convey Bob Moog's story in a powerful and accurate way. So I encourage any of you out there, if you have materials you want to donate to our archive, we would be very grateful, and society will be very grateful. So here we have Dr. Bob's Sound School, our educational initiative, and the Bob Moog Foundation archives, our archive preservation initiative. Those two things have converged into our Moxium. Now, some of you may know that the Moxium has been a vision and a passion of the Bob Moog Foundation since about 2008. And actually in 2008, we got a really sizable grant, a lead grant, to build a multi-million-dollar Moxium. The only catch was we had to raise the rest of the money, which was millions of dollars, to see it to fruition. Unfortunately, the economic downturn of 2008 made that impossible. Our organization was still very young. We still only had one employee, and we decided the prudent thing to do was to put the Moxium on the back burner and really focus on making Dr. Bob's Sound School and the Bob Moog Foundation archives as strong and meaningful as we possibly could, and that's what we did. But the Moxium was always, in not even the back of our mind, somewhere in the front of our mind, as a project we deeply wanted to pursue. Well, patience has its virtues, because 10 years later, in the fall of 2018, we had a chance to lease a spot in downtown Asheville, which is, real estate-wise, is a very expensive place to open any kind of business or facility. But we found something that was accessible to us, and it was a modest space, but it was just enough space for us to really do something meaningful and beautiful. And in the spring of 2019, in May of 2019, on Bob's birthday, actually, we opened the Moxium in downtown Asheville, which boasted 8 experiential, highly technological exhibits that was meant to bring Bob Moog's legacy alive to people from all walks of life, children and adults, and to any knowledge level. So certainly to people who are fans of the Moog legacy and Moog instruments and synthesizers and even electronic music, but to many people who were not. This is a very accessible museum. And we have been thrilled to welcome over 10,000 visitors to the Moxium, and that includes being closed for 5 months last year. And these visitors have come from all over the world, and they are a mix of synth enthusiasts and people who are just coming off the street and have no idea who Bob Moog is. But everyone walks out inspired. The Moxium has received accolades from the press, from visitors, and we have, once again, been so gratified and proud and thrilled to be able to share Bob Moog's legacy in this way. We recently expanded our reach of the Moxium through 13 exhibits that we have as part of Google Arts and Culture's Music Makers and Machines exhibition that launched just recently, and you can check it out if you just Google Arts and Culture and Moxium. It will show up under Moxium, and you'll see the 13 exhibits that are essentially extensions of what we have done in the Moxium. And it's been really wonderful to be able to reach so many more people through the Moog legacy. As a matter of fact, over 300,000 people have seen those exhibits worldwide. So, wow, you know what a wonderful impact. So that's what we've been busy doing over the past 15 years. And even to talk about it, it really delights me. I'm sure that you can tell it's a lot of wonderful work that has touched and inspired tens of thousands of people, both in the United States and around the world. So then the question is, what are we doing next? Well, this is where we're headed. With Dr. Bob's Sound School, we have developed a custom educational tool, something we've been working on for quite a few years. This custom educational tool, which I can't talk about the specifics, but the prototypes are being shipped to us as we speak, will allow us to scale the program nationwide, which has always been our goal. And I know many of you have heard us say that we've just needed the right elements to fall into place for it to happen. And I think, in the next 18 to 36 months, we are going to see that happen. Not only are we going to have this custom educational tool, which will help us expand the program, we now have some new people on our board of directors who are specialists in elementary school education who are going to be able to assist us with scaling. And we are continuing to raise funding so that we can bring the program nationwide. In addition to scaling it nationwide, we'd like to be able to offer more Dr. Bob's Sound School lessons and activities online so that people who don't live in the United States or will not be in an area where the Dr. Bob's Sound School program will be can access some, if not all, of the material. That, of course, takes time, money, and people. So we are slowly building our resources so that we can provide all of those. The Bob Moog Foundation Archives. Well, that collection continues to grow thanks to you, people like you who have donated all different kinds of materials and to acquisitions that the Bob Moog Foundation has been able to make on our own. We, of course, want to continue to share these materials with researchers and with other museums and, of course, through the Moxium. And we also would like to be able to share a lot more of the Moxium online. Again, that just takes funding, human resources, and things that we are building our organization to be able to provide. And finally, the Moxium. Well, in the near future, we are going to be expanding the Moxium, which we have not announced yet. So this is what happens when you show up for a Synthside chat. You learn things that nobody else knows yet. We're going to be expanding the Moxium to open it up to provide an exhibit just on modular synthesis. And this will include a large vintage and a very historic Moog modular from the late 60s. But it will also include a custom designed modular interface that's being designed just for the Moxium, where people will be able to learn about the parameters of modular synthesis and actually do their own patching. To the best of our knowledge, it will be the first exhibit like that in the world, where people will actually be able to create patches on their own. We're really excited about that. It should be coming in the winter of 2022. We also would really love to be able to catalog our archive, to be able to share more of it in the Moxium, but to also be able to share more of it online on the Moxium website. And finally, we have our sights set on developing traveling exhibits. This is something we've been asked about over and over again, and we would love to be able to do that. What people don't realize is it costs about $250,000 to initiate that process. There's a lot that goes into it, just like any complex project. Raising $250,000 is quite an endeavor, and so pending the funding for that, we will keep our sights set on creating traveling exhibits that will hopefully come somewhere close to you sometime in the next several years. So that is where we have been over the last 15 years, if you guys can believe it's been 15 years, and that's where we're going. And of course, none of this would be possible without you. We have a staff of 6 people right now. That's the biggest our staff has ever been. We recently just added 2 people, so it's really been 4 of us for a while. The 6 of us are your engine. We show up every day, passionate, inspired, committed, dedicated. We're ready to do the work. We're ready to make all of these goals happen. But it is you, through your support, that are our fuel. You make us go. So thank you for all of the ways that you have supported the Bob Moog Foundation and the Moxium. A big thanks to our present and past staff, with whom our work would not have been possible. To our present and past members of our board of directors, who so carefully and committedly govern the work of the Bob Moog Foundation, and those are all volunteers. To our recently formed board of advisors, who willingly give of their expertise to help our projects. To the donors of all kinds, whether it's financial, whether it's donating archival material to the Bob Moog Foundation archives, whether it's donation of time or talent, thank you. And to our industry supporters, we are deeply grateful to you. To Spectrasonics, who has been so incredibly important to our work. Through the creation of the Bob Moog Tribute Library, which they launched in 2011. It just celebrated its 10 years, and they launched a second version. So now the Bob Moog Tribute Library has over 1,300 sounds on it. And if you are an Omnisphere user, I highly recommend that you check it out. To Motu, who created the Bob Moog Foundation Encore Soundbank, and to Native Instruments, who just 2 years ago created modular icons to benefit us. All of these products help benefit us, and we're deeply grateful to these companies for using their own resources and leveraging their reputation within the industry to help further our work. And finally, and probably most recently in the way of support, I would like to thank Lisa Belladonna, who just last Saturday, which was actually the date of our 15th anniversary, on August 21st, she released Moog-Mentum, an entire album, the proceeds of which go to benefit the Bob Moog Foundation. Moog-Mentum is a reflection of the concert that she gave at the Moog-Mentum Moog-Mentum Festival, which was a 3-day festival at the grand opening of the Moxium in 2019. Lisa uses a huge variety of vintage and contemporary Moog instruments, ARP instruments, as well as mellotrons and other musical instruments. Not one preset was used. It was all hand-patched or hand-created, and it's an absolutely stunning album. I encourage you to download it and give it a listen. I will tell you that on side B, there is a small segment where Bob is actually featured playing the prototype. Lisa asked if she could use a small segment of the Abominatron tape that Bob sent to Herb Deutsch in 1964, which explained the prototype, and in it he demonstrates it. And there is a small segment of that beautifully woven in to the Moog-Mentum album. So thank you to Lisa. And I know we have another special guest with us today, Amin Bhatia, Amin is an example of a supporter who has been supporting us since the very beginning. And he donated the very first album that was completely benefited the Bob Moog Foundation, called Virtuality. And you can check that out on his website. So thank you, Amin, for so many years of wonderful support. And finally, as we're talking about funding and the fuel for our work, I would be remiss not to mention this very special mini Moog right here. We are at the very tail end of one of our raffles, and a lot of you probably know the raffles are incredibly important to our work. They bring in funding that really has helped us get to where we are today. This mini Moog, this vintage mini Moog, which has been fully restored by Wes Taggart, has been signed by Bob Moog, and it's the first time we've ever been able to offer anything like that. So we're really thrilled and honored to be able to provide that. We have about 18% of the tickets left, so not much. The raffle ends on Monday. So don't wait, because our sense is that if any raffle is going to sell out, it's going to be this one. We are really, really close to that happening. So please purchase a ticket or a bundle of tickets. Please tell your friends and spread the word and help us sell this out. So thank you again for being with us as we celebrate. Thank you for all of your support. And now I am going to check my phone here and see if we have any questions. I don't see any questions yet. Do you guys have any questions for me? Okay, no questions yet. Okay, all right. Well, I could sit here and tell Moog stories, but I'll just wait for another minute. But I will just close out then by saying what an honor it has been for me to serve the Bob Moog Foundation and the Moxium for the past 15 years. It is one of the immense privileges of my life, and I'm looking forward to the next 15 years. And someone is reminding me to talk about our online store as another way that people support us, and that is definitely true. You can go to the BMF store through our website. Just click on shop. We have a huge variety of offerings on that store, from really cool t-shirts and posters to music and books, and lots of other items. Just remember, everything you purchase goes to help fuel our projects. Aha, okay, here we go. Now we got some questions. I love questions, thank you. One is, are there any rare Moog instruments that you would like to display at the Moxium? Yes. Well, I should mention we had the Moog prototype that was on loan from the Henry Ford Museum at the Moxium for about a year and a half. And we absolutely loved having that very special synthesizer there. We were sad to see it go, but the Henry Ford Museum are wonderful stewards of that instrument. So that was kind of a crowning achievement. At some point, we would love to have Keith Emerson's modular on display, but I will have to talk to my very dear friends at MEAP about that. But I think that we'll need to be in a slightly bigger space before we can do that. We would also love to have the prototypes of all 4 mini Moogs on display at some point. MEAP also is the wonderful steward of those instruments. So we'll talk to them at some point when they're ready, and when we're ready, we probably also need a little bit more room to be able to do that. And that is something that we are looking towards at some point, is expanding the space of the Moxium to accommodate those kind of exhibits. Who knows, we would love to have Tonto exhibited. That is a huge endeavor and probably won't happen for another 5 years, but it would be wonderful. And there are lots of other very special synthesizers. Alwyn Nikolai's modular, which is at the Stearns Collection at the University of Michigan. the Eric Sidé drum synthesizer, which is in a museum in Paris. There are many, many wonderful synthesizers, and we will do our best to share them when we have the capacity to do that. Any news about the Bob Moog documentary? Well, I do get that question a lot, and I understand it. It's been a long time in the making, and I can tell you there is news, and the news is that the producer and the director have been working really hard to make this into a stunning offering. And they have put together a 2-hour cut and a 4-hour cut. But in doing that, they realized they actually needed to take a slightly different perspective. And so now they are kind of reshaping this wonderful, powerful story, which is actually going to allow them to include more of the interviews of the scores of people that we interviewed all over the world. So it's coming. They're working on it. And please do not give up. When it's done, it's really going to be very, very insightful. I mean, I learned a lot through the interviews, and they have access to a lot of material that most people don't have access to. So it's happening. I don't have a time frame, but just, take a deep breath, please, and be patient with us. It's kind of like the Moxium. It took us 10 years to be able to do it. And when we did it right. So that is what Waveshaper Media is trying to do with Electronic Voyager as well. Someone's asking me if I can say a little bit more about the Modular Exhibit. Well, trying to think about how much I should say. The Modular Exhibit is going to feature an incredible modular that actually belonged to Patrick Gleason of Different First Studios, and then to Don Preston of Mothers of Invention. It was the Moog modular that was used on Apocalypse Now, and it is currently being restored. That will take at least another couple months. Wreak Havoc of Sounds Amazing Exhibit Design is designing the custom interface for it. So the interface will actually look like a Moog modular. And he is working with a software company that I'm not going to reveal yet, that will provide the engine, the synthesis engine. Because as you can imagine, with tens of thousands of people coming through the Moxium, we are going to need to use software to drive it and not analog synthesis. So that's pretty much the complexion of that exhibit at this time. But stay tuned. If you're not signed up for our e-newsletter, please do that. Check back on our Facebook page. We will have more news about it probably around the end of the year. Do you think Bob could have thought that any of this would have been possible? My dad was so humble and kind of deflective even about his fame or notoriety, about having a legacy. I'm not sure he would have ever imagined anything like this. It's certainly something he never spoke about. And I should mention, there was absolutely, when he passed away, first of all, there was very little money left, but there was certainly none left for a foundation. Just there are some people who mistakenly think he left us tens of thousands of dollars and this is what we're doing with it. That's not the case. So I think that honestly, if he were to come back for a day and we were to show him this initially, it would make him a little uncomfortable. But that's only from the fame perspective. I'm not sure he would get it because he never really thought of himself in that way. However, when he saw the results of the 20,000 little kids who can read waveforms, who can identify the parts of the ear, who know the mediums that sound waves travel through, when he could see the people going through the Moxium and getting inspired not only by his life story, Leon Theremin's life story, by being able to play a theremin and a synthesizer, understanding synthesis, and absorbing our big timeline of synthesis, which also honors 34 different inventions, not just Moog instruments. I think he'd be really pleased because he was dedicated to educating people his entire life, whether it was one-on-one or whether it was going into all academic institutions and nursing homes. He would go anywhere and talk about the theremin, the synthesizer, the history of electronic music. He loved that. He loved sharing the knowledge he had. And, through the foundation, we are trying to do just that. So I don't think he would have imagined it, but I think that once he understood what we were doing, he would appreciate it. What was the relationship between your dad and Ray Kurzweil? Well, Ray Kurzweil hired my father as a consultant in the early 80s. At the time, my father had recently left Moog Music in Buffalo, had started his own custom electronic musical instrument business called Big Briar Incorporated, which was actually named after the cove where we lived. We lived on an 89-acre piece of property out in the country, and it was called Big Briar Cove, and the business was named after that. And part of what Dad did in that business is he did consulting, as you might imagine. He had been in the business for decades. Well, that consulting position eventually turned into an offer to become the vice president for new product research in 1984. That coincided with a time when Bob had 4 kids about to go through college, and Big Briar Incorporated was not really generating enough income to support the family, especially with college tuitions coming up. So he and my mom packed me and my little brother up, and we headed up to Boston. My father worked for Kurzweil for 5 years and really respected Ray as a fellow inventor and as his boss. And eventually, though, he did return to North Carolina. Let's see, I think I've got one more question. How do I introduce Dr. Bob Sound School to my daughter's 2nd grade class in Washington, D.C.? Well, that is a great question. I've been asked that many times before, which is why we are working so hard to scale Dr. Bob Sound School nationwide. And I would say, please sign up for our e-newsletter list. Please keep an eye on our Facebook page. And we also have a Dr. Bob Sound School Facebook page. We will be working directly with school districts and administering the scaled Dr. Bob Sound School through school districts. So we will let people know how they can bring Dr. Bob Sound School to their area as soon as we are ready. So please sign up for our e-newsletter, and we will let you know. We will be very excited to start that process. I assure you. Those were all great questions. Thank you. I really enjoy hearing what you guys are thinking about and being able to give you some kind of insight. So I think at this point, we will wrap this up, and I will just say thank you again, everybody, for being here. Thank you to Eric and Molly for helping us pull this off. Take very good care of yourselves out there, and please continue to support the work of the Bob Moog Foundation.